Christmas. Huh? What was that?
Are we having the regular class?
Yeah, why?
Or the Monday morning?
We're talking about gifts. You're not all of you want.
Why Monday morning? This is Wednesday.
Oh, seems like yesterday was Sunday. So,
Yeah, you know, they just did a test for Colleen. They wanted to know. And they asked, what day is it? Not a good time. But I do it all the time. It's hard to remember. So Santa brought everybody something good. Everybody's happy. Shalom. I'll just quickly chant. I can't sing. Jayo Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari Jayo Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari Gopi Jana Baba Girivardhari Gopi Jana Baba Yashodanandana Prajananandana Yashodanandana Prajananandana Yamuna Tira Vanashanti Tira Vanashanti Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki. All the assembled devotees ki jai. So, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 Narayanam namaskritya naram shaiva naruttamam devim saraswatim vyasam tatam jayam udiriye. Before reciting Srimad Bhagavatam, we should first offer our respectful obeisances to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Narayan, to Narayan Rishi, the supremmost human being, Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and to Srila Prabhupada, our spiritual master. Namah Vishnu Vinay, Krishna Vistadhutale, Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swamita Namani, Namaste Saraswati Devi, Gaurvani Jani Nidesesha, Sunnivari Paskita Desadharine. So, this is text 27 from the Canto 1, chapter 18, Parikit cursed by a Brahmana boy. Viprakirna Jatachanam Viprakirna Chachanam Rauravam Najinena I'll break it into two words if I can. It says here, there's Ravena, and then Ajinena. So it comes out as Ravena Jina, the A just goes into one. So Rao, Ravena, Jinena, Cha. Rao, Ravena, Jinena, Cha. Vishushat, Talor, Udakam. Vishushat, Talor, Udakam. Tata, Bhutan, Ayachata, Tata Bhutam Ayachata. So there you go. Viprakirna Jata Chanam. Rao Ravina Jinena Cha. Vishushat Talor Udakam. Tata Bhutam Ayachata. Viprakirna Jata Chanam. Rao Ravena Jinena Cha. Vishushat Talor Udakam. Tata Bhutam Ayachata. Viprakirna Jata Chanam. Rao Ravena Jinena Cha. Vishuyat Talor Udakam. Tata Bhutam Ayachata. So that was at least 3 times. Anyone? Good. Viprakirna Chitachanam. Roravena Jinena Cha. Vishuyat Talor Udakam. Tata Bhutam Ayachata.
John? Yeah, I thought you want to do it?
I cannot see.
Oh, you can't see?
From
Okay,
a
I thought.
distance.
Viprakirna Jatachanam. Roravane Jinena Cha. Vishuyatalorakam. Tata Bhutam Ayachata.
Viprakirna Jatachanam.
Viprakirna Jatachanam.
Guru Ravena Jinena Anena.
Ravena Jinena Cha.
Vishushatulurudakam. Tata Bhutam Ayachata.
Viprakirna Jatachanam. Rauravena Jinena Cha. Vishushatalur Udakam. Tabutam Ayachata. Viprakirna Jatachanam. Rauravena Jinena Cha. Vishuyattalur Udakam. Tabutam Ayachata.
Viprakirna Jatachanam. Rauravena Jinecha. Vishushatalur Udakam
Vishishyatadodakam
Tata Bhutamaya
Tata Bhutam Yayachata. Okay then, so the word for word is Viprakirna, all scattered. Jata, Achanam, covered with compressed long hair.
Covered with compressed long hair.
Ravena, by the skin of a stag. Adinena, by the skin. Cha, also. Vishushat, dried up. Talu, palate. Udakam, water. Tatabutam, in that state. Ayachata, ask for. So I'll say, and then you can repeat. The sage, in meditation, was covered by the skin of a stag, and long compressed hair was scattered all over him. The king, whose palate was dry with thirst, or actually it says dry from thirst, asked him for water. So I'll repeat it. The sage in meditation was covered by the skin of a stag, and long compressed hair was scattered all over him. The king, whose palate was dry from thirst, asked him for water. So, the story is that he was out and about, King Pariksit, touring the empire, and he approached a hermitage, and he was very, very thirsty. So he goes in, and the sage that resides there was in deep meditation, and he was in need of water. So purport: the king, being thirsty, asked the sage for water. That such a great devotee and the king asked for water from a sage absorbed in trance was certainly providential. Otherwise, there was no chance of such a unique happening. Maharaj Pariksit was thus placed in an awkward position so that gradually Srimad Bhagavatam could be revealed. Again, the verse is, the sage in meditation was covered by skin, the skin of a stag, and long compressed hair was scattered all over him. The king, whose palate was dry with thirst, asked him for water. And then the next couple of verses, it explains how he reacted to being ignored by the sage, and which sets in a whole chain reaction to where we are today, Kali Yuga. And this is, it's like Prabhupada says in the purport that this was a unique happening. You mentioned providential. Where was it? Absorbed. Oh, yes. That such a great devotee and king asked for water from a sage absorbed in trance was certainly providential. This was obviously something that was being arranged by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And anyone who's practiced Krishna consciousness, even if it's just for a few weeks, but especially if you've been doing it, after a few years, there are moments in your life where you realize this is a test. I can see this. Sometimes you may not immediately see that it's a test, and you see it in hindsight. But after a while, after being through these situations for a while, you'll start to realize this is part of the purification process here. This isn't just a normal, thing that's going on. And there are so many stories involving the reception of guests. And some of them are good stories where it was done nicely and there was benedictions. Some of them were almost scary ones, but in the last moment they were resolved by Krishna. And some of them led to people like a king who wanted to give up his empire so that he could become as powerful as a Brahmin, because he realized that the Brahmins were more powerful than the kings. That's Vashishta and Vishwamitra Muni. And there's so many, and then the way Krishna received Sudama Brahmin, there's just so many stories that you can tell about the importance in the Vedic culture on how to receive a guest, and what happens if you don't receive a guest properly, and what happens if you do receive a guest properly. I mean, even there's one side story in the Mahabharata, apparently, which I'm not so expert on, but that Duryodhana actually thought when Krishna came as a messenger, he could kidnap him and change the course of the war. I think they were even thinking they could kill him, which is, I don't remember all the details of it. And of course, then Krishna revealed to him a partial universal form, and Duryodhana realized he couldn't kill the universal form. But even then, he still didn't realize what he was up against. He still thought, maybe there's a chance. Yeah, well, chances are good. I got his army. I got Grandfather Bhishma, never say die. So that just shows the intention, the intensity of the envy. But I think one story that isn't exactly necessarily along those lines, like I think it's the story with Kunti, where she, Durvasa Muni, some sage came, and he was so pleased with her reception, that's how she got the mantra, that she could bring any demigod to her. And then there's the story with Draupadi. And she could cook for as many people as required, but she could only do it once in a day. And then they had already finished the meal. And then Durvasa Muni shows up with 60,000 disciples. And she doesn't have anything. And she doesn't know what to do. So he says that she doesn't inform him of this, but he says, we're going to go and bathe before our meal, and we'll be back. And I expect a meal. And Durvasa Muni is very easily pleased. He's also very easily displeased. There's so many stories with Durvasa Muni. The one with Ambarish, so on and so forth. So she's, again, in what I always refer to as a Draupadi moment, where it's named for her. That there's no other way, the best way to describe it is like you can't leave, you can't go, you can't stay, you can't, there's nothing you can do but just plead to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Krishna tells her, just look through the pots. I don't know if he tells her mentally or through her heart or she sees him, but she's praying to him. Look in your pots and you'll find some morsel of food. She says, no, it's all finished. And then she finds one little morsel of food, whether it was like leafy green vegetable or a grain of rice, and she offered that to Krishna with all of her devotion. And then, because he was pleased, Durvasa Muni and all of his disciples were pleased while in the river. So they didn't feel like it was proper for them to come back and ask for a meal, because they felt satisfied. So in this way, a calamity was averted. But in today's society, we don't have the same kind of understanding about people coming as guests. I mean, where I grew up, everybody on my block was an aunt or an uncle. It was like everybody, just walked in and out. We were all like cousins, brothers, you might say, like in an Indian village. But, it's not always like that. In most places in America, you see fences with, security locks and dogs very strong, big dogs, cameras, surveillance, motion detectors. You know, I mean, when I was reading electric meters in this county right outside of Nashville, every month they knew, the proprietors, and for decades, they knew that around the 18th of the month or around the 3rd of the month, depending on what routes they were in, that someone would show up with, you know, a little sign on the side of his door saying he's a meter reader. And every month they would say, "Can I help you?" I mean, with a real kind of, and you know, once or twice I answered like, well, I actually said once, I said, "I'd love for you to help me, but I can't really pay you very much, and I think by the time I finish training you, it wouldn't be worth it." And they'd be like, they couldn't believe I was talking to them like that. I said, "I'm reading the meter. I'm reading your electric meter, you know." So there's always that sense of fear that someone is coming to take my possessions, and it's justified. We're not living in a very peaceful society, and so it's completely different. Besides the fact you have these laws of stand your ground, where that poor boy, back, I don't know, was it 8-10 years ago in Florida, he was just walking through an apartment complex, and he was shot. And I know everybody has probably got some story over the last 10 or 12 years that just doesn't make any sense. And one that sticks in my mind was, there was this young Japanese man who loved the American culture that he saw on TV or in the movies. And he couldn't wait to come to America. I think he was around the time of Halloween or something. Anyway, he was misplaced from his friends. So he walked up the driveway to ask for directions. And the man, told him to halt. And he didn't quite understand. He said, no, I'm just trying to get directions. And because he didn't immediately do as he was told, the man shot him, killed him. I mean, there's all kinds of stories like this that, it's just not, I don't know if it's still like this in India now, as it's being described. Is it like this in the villages in India now? People can just come and you'll be greeted nicely?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah,
Little bit. Yeah. No, because I heard there's a story of the most famous singer in India. And he's also in the movies, I can't remember his name. He was, I don't know if he's still alive, but he's a very depressed person, very miserable. And he has all these cameras and everything. I think he lives in Delhi or Bombay. And he has this sign saying, you come here, your life is over. He's so depressed and so miserable and so afraid of the public that he doesn't want anyone to come. He gives very severe warnings like that. So, but in the Vedic culture, and here's the king, the emperor, not just the king, he's an emperor, and he's coming into a sadhu's hut, and he's in meditation. And so, yeah, you should understand that the man's in meditation, and you start to think, well, why didn't he just take some water? He's in meditation, but this was supposed to happen. This is what Krishna was arranging. This was providential. This Krishna, and hold on one second. So the king, he's a little annoyed, so he sees a snake of a dead snake, and garlands the sage with the dead snake. And his son, when he comes along, he's very immature, and he's already starting to be influenced by the age of Kali, and he becomes immediately insulted. And he goes down to the river and puts his finger in the water and curses that the king, or the emperor, Parikshit, would be killed by a snake bird in 7 days. When his father comes to, but as soon as he did it, the boy felt remorse. He felt awful. What have I done? And so he's starting to cry really loudly. And so the father wakes up, comes out of his trance, and then he explains what happened. He says, what have you done? Why? Because of this? Because of the snake? This is nothing. You completely overreacted. So, and it could have been reversed. But at that moment, Parikshit knew this was providential. This was supposed to happen. That he should go down by the river and listen to the Bhagavatam, to listen to Sukadeva Goswami and prepare that he's on the threshold of death. Now it's time to get ready to go. But this, I was thinking that this also kind of reminds me of a story about Dhruva Maharaj. And it wasn't so long ago in a class, I remember Madhva Priya was giving, she was saying, I think all of the pastimes in the Lord just mainly involve an incarnation of Krishna coming. And we only could come up with Indra, where he's in that fight with Vritrasura. But then I remembered later that there's also the story of Dhruva. And so Dhruva, as a 5-year-old boy, he wants his brother is named Uttam, and his father's name is Uttanapada. And the mother of Uttam is Surichi, and Dhruva's mother is Sunita. And Uttanapada became king because his brother Priyavata wasn't interested. And they're the sons of Swayambhuva Manu and the grandsons of Brahma. So one day, the son of Suruchi, Uttam, was on the king's lap and he was petting his head. And so Dhruva, as an innocent boy, wants to get up on his lap too. And Suruchi says, you can't sit on his lap. Who do you think you are? You're not born from my womb. If you want to be able to sit on your father's lap, you should go and worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead and then die. Then maybe you can be fortunate enough to take birth in my womb. And then you'll have the opportunity to be the heir to the throne. But otherwise, no. I'm the king's favorite. And Dhruva is crushed. He's 5 years old. He's a Kshatriya who's been really insulted. He's a 5-year-old boy. And his father is also rejecting. This is his favorite wife. She's the younger one and his favorite wife. So he is so upset. And he's breathing very heavily. And he comes back to see his mother, Suniti, and explains what happens. And she is livid. But she never yells or loses control. And the first thing she says, do not wish for anything bad for something to happen to anyone. Because whatever you wish bad for someone will happen to you. If you curse someone, if you want someone to suffer, then you will get what you wish for, but it'll happen to you. And especially in an age like that, I don't think it was in the Kali Yuga. So, and obviously if it's Swayambhuva Manu, it's not even in this day of Brahma. Because isn't this wrong? I mean, by Vashishta Manu or something, Vavashata, it's a different Manu now. So, she also advises him the same thing, that go and please the Supreme Lord. And so he says, well, how do I do that? Where do I find the Supreme Lord? And the mother says, as far as I know, when anyone wants to, the sages want to connect with God or Vishnu, they go to the forest. So she's actually telling her 5-year-old boy to go to the forest. I mean, that sounds a little dangerous. But she was a Kshatriya blood too. And, she knew that she was nothing she could do to appease her son. He was ready for war. And he wanted to avenge this insult. It's just what happens when there's envy. And envy is like, it's just pure poison. That's why we're here. Whenever you envy someone, or for what they have, you feel, and even if it even may be that they don't even have what you think they have. You may be envying them, thinking that they're really well situated, and actually they're in complete anxiety. But that envy completely pollutes your intelligence. It pollutes your mind. It poisons your relationships with everything and everyone. And it's why we can't love Krishna. Anyway, that's another topic. Anyway, I want to make this a short class because there's hardly anybody here. She tells him, go to the forest. So he does. And he starts walking around the forest and he's asking different animals, are you God? Or do you know where I can find God? And, no one, he doesn't find anyone adequate. And then Narada Muni, of course, is always, on the spot at the right moment. He sees what's going on, and he immediately descends to give Dhruva some good advice. First of all, he tells him, you should wait. You're too young for this. You should give this up and wait till you're a little bit more mature, and then this is a very, very serious matter, and this is the forest, and it's very, very dangerous, and you're just a young boy. And Dhruva doesn't want any part of it. He doesn't want to hear anything about it. She has said, I am not qualified for my father's affection, that I am not qualified to inherit his kingdom, then I want a kingdom greater than his. I want a kingdom greater than my great-grandfather, Brahma. This is a 5-year-old boy. And Narada Muni tries, and he realizes he's up against a very stubborn, a very determined, I don't want to use stubborn because that's a negative connotation, a very determined young man. This was no ordinary person. And so he gives him certain instructions, and he gave him a mantra. Does anyone know what the mantra is? Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Right. And I think he says if you chant it 3 times a day for 7 days or something like that, or for a certain period of time, you will see the perfect beings flying in the sky. When I first read that or heard that, I was thinking, oh, I'm going to do that. I've been doing it for a lot. And they're there, I know they are, but, but not to my vision. But in any case, of course, we have, through sound vibration, we see them, and through sound vibration, we get to associate with Prabhupada. And and then we have all of the devotees that are striving for perfection in Krishna consciousness. I was reading something, this spoke about Ganga, Mother Ganga, calling board for me. And in the introduction, devotee Jai Vijay, who does the bullock cart program, Padayatra, all over India. He's done it for years. He was saying that in every one of the dhams or tirthas, even though it may appear that it's mismanaged, or that the people there are not attentive, or they seem dirty, or the place seems dirty, you should never underestimate their spiritual position, and you should be very, very cautious. And this was the point that I remember initially when the devotees were trying, in North America, were wanting to sell various temples, and even before I met Jataka Maharaj, this was the point that why I was adamant not to sell the Atlanta temple, because it was a tirtha. It's not necessarily a dham, it's a tirtha. It's a place where a pastime was performed. And I didn't know that Jataka Maharaj was in charge. Prabhupada had personally put him in charge of making sure that these things are protected. Because what do we have in America? I mean, as far as I know, there's no incarnation of the Lord. Maybe in some Purana somewhere, or some other day of Brahma, there was a pastime. Although in a TLC, and I can't reference the place, the exact part of the TLC, Teachings of Lord Chaitanya, Prabhupada says that there's a presiding deity of Krishna on every continent, which would be a great Indiana Jones story, to find that deity, that presiding deity. So, but what we do have is the tirthas, where Prabhupada performed various pastimes. And then also what his devotees have done and are doing and will be doing. And those places will be padayatras. They will be sacred places. People will come. 500 years from now, they'll want to come and see the place where Prabhupada came for one day to New Talavana and gave these instructions. Or go to Panahati, New Panahati in Atlanta, where he went into ecstasy after seeing the deities. These different pastimes. Just like the devotees do now in India. Yes?
And Maharaj, that was just here the other day during Gita Jayanti. That was the reason he came.
Yeah, because Prabhupada had been here. See, that is what's going to happen. There'll be that whole, we say agritourism. There's going to be transcendental tourism in the future. And so, where was I? I forgot. Why did I go there? But I was talking about Dhruva Maharaj and his determination to achieve this goal. And so I'll just end it quickly here. So that Narada Muni instructs him that you chant these mantras, this mantra Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, and then he does this, and I don't remember the exact breakdown, but initially every other day or every day he's eating leaves and berries, and then every third day he might be just having the leaves and the bark or something, and then every fifth day he's having a sip of water, and finally it gets down to that he's just having one breath of air once a week. And the whole universal creation, the air, everyone in the universe is suffocating because he's controlling. He's become one with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He's one in quality, and so he's controlling the flow of air, and he's suffocating everything. And so finally, they all the demigods go to and say, "Please, please, let's satisfy this problem." And then the Lord goes to see him. And anyway, I'd like to talk more about Dhruva Maharaj, but I don't have the adequate time. So, but this all has to do with, again, there's two main elements here, and one is respect for, for guests, for everyone, and being non-envious. Because if you don't receive some, there's some element like that. And in this case, Surichi, she wanted, and there's so many stories like with the wives Dasarath and moms being put into exile. So anyway, I kind of lost my train of thought, I'm sorry. So what does anyone have any questions? Or, yes?
Well, it seems in the beginning of that story of Dhruva Maharaj, where his stepmother is really, I feel like she's the one that's envious. But it turns out that Dhruva Maharaj has some kind of envy because he feels it's his right to sit on his father's lap. But it is his right.
It is his right, yeah.
I feel like that his whole attitude and all that problem started with the injustice of him not being told that he's not allowed to sit on his dad's. Right. It's his dad too, just like the other boy's dad.
Right.
So I feel.
Well, he regrets it though at the end. Right,
but anyway, the envy I see there started out the envy from the stepmom. But you're saying anyway, it's all a pastime, so it's not like we need.
Yeah, I don't say that he's envious in the sense. I just say that because he's a Kshatriya blood, he wants justice. I think that's what it is. But what we've been learning all throughout the first canto, starting with the Kali coming upon the religion personified, the bulls, and seeing Pariksit sees Kali beating the bull, and the bull refuses to say that it's Kali. He's basically saying, it could be this, it could be that, it could be my karma, it could be, but it's all basically, this is the will of God. And then, the other day in a class I was mentioning how Haridas Thakur, when he was, this one Qazi was trying to convince the king to beat Haridas Thakur and was making accusations against him, he refused to defend himself. Because he says, whatever's going to happen is the will of God. I'm not going to go. He did preach to the king, and at first the king started to be swayed by his preaching, but then the Qazi came back with something else, and how all the Muslims are now chanting this Hindu mantra. It's not a Hindu mantra, there's no such thing as Hindu anyway. But so then he just accepted that this is the will of God. And so the lesson that's apparently being taught to us is that, the only way you can be tolerant as a tree is that you understand whatever is happening is part of the Lord's plan for you. And this is easy to say sitting in a comfortable chair in a comfortable room in front of the deities. But when you're put into the so-called quote-unquote Draupadi moments, the only way to get through it, besides completely throwing yourself at the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and His representative, is to understand that this wasn't my fault. You don't have to think like that. This is someone else's fault. Maybe it is my fault from the past. And get all confused and trying to blame this other person and get into a whole, retaliation and defending and a never-ending dance. It could go on for years. It could go on for lifetimes of trying to retaliate to prove I'm right. The argument never ends. What?
Hatfields in the course.
Yeah, exactly. The Hatfields in the course. It never ends. Always have to get the last word. It's just let go. Forget about it. The last word is, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I hope this made some sense. Anyway, is there anything else? Okay, Haribol.
Isn't that such a sweet kirtan today?
Yes.
That's so nice.
Yeah.
Tamal playing the mridanga.
Yeah. I'm missing Tamal leading a kirtan.
Yeah. Whoa, look at this beautiful beat bag.
The Bengali Bhakti. Is that, can you turn that off? Can someone turn that?
Turn what off?
Is it on?
Turn what off? Oh, that. Yeah, I'm sure it is.
This looks like something.